Good morning, everyone. I'm Loris Rossi, and I'm professor at Polis University in Tirana. Today, I'm going to give to you a lecture. Is my well, my point of view, my personal point of view on certain relevance of regarding my research in the last 3 years, 4 years. But especially the reason of this talk is retraceable to my last experience, almost 8, 9 years spent in doing research and practice in Tirana, in Albania, and in a specific spot in the place which is Polis University. Um, so I'm going to start. Yes. Okay. So, title of the talk is, you may see, the power and precision in architecture and urban design. The lecture is going to be divided into sections in order to make more comfortable your attention, but also myself. Uh, the first is I'm gonna read a paper. Yes, it's gonna take 15 minutes almost. I'm gonna give certain indication related to the my refraction and my thought about the imprecision in architecture and urban design, as already specified. The second part is gonna be more illustrative, illustration, drawing, and yes, and a certain example. So, okay, let's start. Yes. This lecture is an attempt to investigate the concept of imprecision as a creative mechanism to generate a design process in architecture. The importance of exploring the architectural meaning of behind the word imprecision comes from the need to find didactic tools able to create design process within architecture and urban uncertainty, or even specific, to be more specific, in all of that kind of phenomena in urban settlement where there is not a clear plan or overplan. Therefore, this talk may be considered a small attempt to enable students and architects to open new creative paths within objects, drawing, and city pattern characterized by absence of unique and reassuring clarity. Yes. If we look at the past, considering the meaning of the word imprecision in the field of architecture and art, there are two books which are, I believe, are relevant in this case. The first was written in the 1959, quite old book, by a very important art historian, which is famous name, Ernest Hans Joseph Gombrich, entitled Art and Illusion, which is the one of the left, your left. The second one, which is closer to the main objectives of our investigation, is a book written by Giovanni Garroni. He is professor at University of Ferrara School of Architecture. The book was published in 2005, let's say more recently than the other one, and the title is Elogio dell'imprecisione, percezione e rappresentazione. Both books try to define the meaning of the word imprecision, playing with the limits of the discipline in architecture field. This idea to play with the limit of the discipline may allow us exactly to export and to import from different disciplines in an interdisciplinary way certain creative concepts related to the word imprecision. And we will see more. Um, Around the word imprecision, there is another relevant contributions. Once a very important name in the architecture field said, I like elements which are hybrid rather than pure, compromising rather than clean, distorted rather than straightforward, ambiguous rather than articulated, perverse as well as impersonal, boring as well as interesting, conventional rather than designed. I'm for messy vitality over obvious unity. Of course, this is a sentence quite famous of Robert Verturi that you can find in Complexity of Architecture. But looking through another point of view, only in few cases, Venturi's investigation attempts to reveal an objectification of design process behind a specific project. He was quite cryptic to my point of view. Although it appears evident that in some of the references he presents, we can identify some sort of uncomfortable architecture composition. This idea of uncomfortable architecture composition, imprecise or even structured, with not a clear structure that you can say catch in the first impact. Okay. Within this frame of discussion, the word imprecision becomes an investigation subject that ought to be observed and stressed in order to amplify Venturi's objective to work with richness of meanings rather than clarity of meanings. But before addressing the meaning of the term imprecision, we must introduce its antonymy. So, the word precision. Okay. The word precision comes from the French word précision, if I'm not wrong, if I'm spelling good in France. It roots as something common with the word incision. If we analyze the root of the word precision, we discover that the prefix pre means before, while cis, a version of the Latin word cidere, which means to cut, and the ion means instead of, as a condition. Therefore, precision means to cut in advance, so pre-cut. However, in order to cut something, we need to take measurement first. In other words, we need a clear project with enough initial information in order to make an objective measurement. This is a kind of clear distinction in between the word of pre-define and not predefine. So my thought it's more related and say it's framing. I want to frame in the idea of working and finding process in a precondition not defined before. Observing the first steps of the creative process, the word precision never defines the activities of the architects and the students. Almost, yes, pretty much never. We will find a very confusing environment full of ambiguity and uncertainty instead. It is not by chance that during the initial phase of the design process, students try to constrain their ideas, and not just students, also architects, of course, by following case studies or shoe diagrams to make the proposal clearer. Another interesting point of view which can reinforce the meaning of imprecision creativity process comes from a wonderful experience of the jazz musician Herbie Hancock. I guess everybody knows. In the book Possibilities, which is his autobiography, in more than one occasion, Hancock emphasized how jazz musicians experiment using the technique of improvisation. This idea of improvisation, in my thought, it's very close to the idea of not predefined. So, defining something, but not something planned before, not measured before, like the definition of the words may say. And what Herbie Hancock used to say, you can read in his book, is he tried to define the word improvisation. Improvisation, he said, truly being in the moment means explore it, what you don't know. Exploring what you don't know, yes. It means going into the dark room where you don't recognize things. It means operating on the recall part of your brain, a sort of muscle memory, and allowing your gut, yes, to take precedent over your brain. So, in a certain way, what exactly Hancock tried to define is exactly in the improvisation an idea to explore our black box exactly and to pick up things that we need, but put it in, sometimes also in a disordered way, without a rational logic. New possibilities come to us when an unconventional way to operate produce new research paths. As already explained, the act of making a preemptive cut also means to take a precise measures or to decide beforehand to use a scientific method in order to receive a precise answer, as already mentioned. If we keep our focus on the action of cutting, there is also another interesting consideration that can be made. Every time we decide to operate with a precision using a specific tool or method, we must consider the generation of a scraps, leftover stuff. The idea of producing scraps after an act of precision can be easily explained by the operation of cutting a defined shape from a sheet of paper, like the example that I'm showing to you in the slide. Such operation will produce a large number of leftover scraps of paper with different sizes and dimensions. It's quite practical things. The operation of cutting a precise shape bringing us directly into a possible practical reinterpretation of the meaning of imprecision. If we consider the relation between the precise shape and its background, the leftover pieces of paper reveal a world of opportunities. The example of cities without a clear and organized master plan is quite significant to this regard. From above, this kind of cities, above, with their irregular pattern, appear as organisms developed through the consecutive addition of leftover pieces. And there are many examples of this kind of, even Rome is an example of city which is like without a clear structure and overplay, but many cities in all of the Mediterranean area. The objective is now to analyze different creative contexts where the meaning of precision, or cutting before, can create a multiplicity in terms of idea in design process. So let's analyze and let's touch a bit. And I'm asking sorry by now if I'm going to jump from one discipline to another. But what I'm going to do is a kind of test, is an attempt. So we can create a condition linked to the idea of imprecision in which, picking from different field, different, let's say, even better discipline, this phenomena, framing this phenomena, we can discover interesting things useful for our work. This is my idea. So the first case that I wanted to show you, of course, is a quite famous case, is presented by one of the most famous 20th century artists, Lucio Fontana. I don't think he needs introduction. But the question is, can Fontana's cut on the canvas be described as a precise sign? Probably yes. However, what we are more interested in is in the exact opposite of precision. We are interested in all the imprecise white space Fontana leaves untouched. If we try to compare Fontana's cut with the previous example of cutting a precise shape from a large surface, all the leftover scraps of paper can be compared to all the white background left untouched by Fontana in a certain way. Despite celebrated importance of the canvas, okay, as a body, that can be transgressed, Fontana highlights the importance of the vacuum as a field of possibilities. Vacuum as a field of possibilities. This is a very interesting, let's say, attempt that we try, to underline and to align in this kind of discussion. And we will meet more later on. The white canvas, like the leftover pieces of paper, establish a deep relationship between what is the here and now, yes, today, present time, and what could be in the future is an open possibility. The second reference is the most beautiful rotunda in the world, of course, the Pantheon, Roman Pantheon. The structure is generated by a very precise geometry, the dimension in plane, the diameter, no? The radius and diameter of the Pantheon is 43 meters and 30 centimeters, it's a well-known dimension, used both for plane and cross-section. While observing the exterior of the Pantheon, the precise drawing of the plane generated by an exact geometry looks contradictory compared to the formal details of the exterior's fabric. Let's see a bit better. The main object is characterized by a series of additional elements which, during the past centuries, have been yes, preserved as a trace of different manipulation. Also, the Pantheon, in its magnificence, discloses an interesting imprecision, something not predefined, not precise, no? By the original project, let's say. Carefully analyzing the main elevation of the structure, we can notice a very peculiar detail. The main facade is composed by a double gable, something very unusual if we consider the classical order of ancestral Roman architecture, which of course we pretty much know, no? How certain things were um, very elaborated before, predefined, okay, planned, designed as a project. In the history of architecture, the Pantheon has been considered in many different aspects by architects, but just a few architects were able to look at the Pantheon not merely concentrating on its geometry, no, on the things that was predetermined, but rather observing the characteristic of its imperfection. Among them, of course, Palladio, the work of Palladio was Andrea Palladio was also very well explained in a famous book of Radolf Wittkower, Principle of Architecture in the Human Age. And there was a kind of nice tentative in which Andrea Palladio he took this idea of, let's say, addition, no, in the facade of the Pantheon as a creative contest to solve certain issue unsolved by that time in the Renaissance in the relation in between the plan of the church and the facade. Okay, and that is the case of San Giorgio in Venice or the facade of the Redentore, always in Venice. The double gable, double timpano of the Pantheon. Such mistake in the Roman time became something relevant in the Renaissance. Um, a very interesting third example of the creative relationship between precision and imprecision comes from the sculpture world. Yes, there are several references developed around the concept of a finished process in sculpture, but to our opinion, one sculpture in particular embodied the relationship between what we consider defined and what is not. The San Marco sculpture of Michelangelo Buonarroti is a combination of method and creativity around the concept of unfinished. It's a very well-known concept. I don't think we need to explain how many times it was mentioned this process of unfinished uh, concept in many of the work of the sculpture elaborated by even in Prigioni, no? The series of Prigioni sculpture by Michelangelo, it was related to the same concept. Like an unfinished sketch, Michelangelo's sculpture leaves room for the imagination. Matter is transferred from an unprecise sign to a precise one. Under closer observation, the sculpture appears to be composed as a narration in sequences. Narration in sequences. Okay? While the body of San Matteo is still draped by the rocks, one knee, okay, appears to surface from the sculpture and is formally defined. The rock becomes an abstract background and it absorbs all the imprecise detail of the still not materialized main figure. And I think also in the image you can appreciate this concept, but or even better, you can read a beautiful description in the Le Vite del Vasari, exactly in the chapter on Michelangelo, and Vasari he described in a magnificent way what was the concept at the time of this scatology sculpture by Michelangelo. And Vasari described the idea of Michelangelo sculpture in this case like a body of person that climb out from the water, okay, from a bath of water. So things that appear close to your eyes are more evident, like the Cnilius of the San Matteo, and all the rest, which is still wrapped by, in that case, by the rocks, but in the idea of Vasari, description of Vasari in the water, are not defined. The last example comes from the identification of a new design process within in-process elaboration in Nolli's map of Rome, even in this case a very famous a scientific topography map, the first topography map of Rome elaborated in 1748. The Nolli's map was the first scientific survey of the capital city center. Its importance comes from the fact that the previous period, which is the Baroque period, let's say, most of the graphical representation of Rome were ideal, so-called bird views, okay, like the beautiful 17th century engravings by Giambattista Falda, but many others, of course. Besides being an exact representation, the Nolli map unveiled a hidden frame, only visible if we investigate the map through the power of imprecision. But let's discover which is this power of imprecision in this case. No? Looking carefully into the map, we can notice a fantastic contradiction. There is a kind of mistake. The black and the white drawing shows some building section and some not. An unusual way to elaborate a scientific map. So it's quite common, no? The description of this map. I don't need to explain here because, of course, there is an evident idea from Nolli, by Nolli, exactly to point out just the public building, the church, the courtyard, palace, certain square, join it with the public, let's say, space. But this is the common point of view. What is my opinion? It's different in this terminology. And in fact, if the map were, yes, considered an actual scientific representation, all the buildings should have been sectioned, no? If you consider, no? Of course, teaching, also learning about scientific representation, if you want to get a building, you have to restitute a building in a plan, to drawing a plan, a topographic map, you have to cut it all, no? In this case, if there is an house, you cut it all the room, all the living area, all the bedroom, and so on and so forth. In this case, if you wanted to show map the center, at that time, of course, Rome historical center as a scientific topographic representation, you have to cut all the building. But these decide to do not so. It is exactly due to this imprecision or creative error, that Nolli showed for the first time the real beauty of Rome. Exactly in this point, deciding to operate not as a plan, no, but as a diagram, okay, and also in this diagram embody the idea of possible error, okay, a voluntary error. The space of the inner city appears to be swelling, joining all the important historical building with the public space. From an apparently precise representation, Nolli produced a powerful map, powerful because interrupted and unfinished, a tool that keeps inspiring students and architects. But let's proceed with another important point. But how do we recognize the power of imprecision in the design process? So the latter was the main question, arising from this investigation. The four references mentioned above show different creative research process in which a precise method or tool originates from an imprecise background, in this case a relation again in between a specific tool and its background or an object and its background. In Lucio Fontana artworks, a sharp sphere appears in the middle of an infinite white background. The cut subtracts space from the neutrality of the canvas. The emptiness of the white canvas is a result of, we can summarize with the word subtractions. This is a specific category for me, subtractions. In the Pantheon, the very precise idea of the plane and cross-section is interrupted by the double gamble facade contradiction. This linguistic anomaly can be seen as an operative tool only if we try to operate within the compositional logic of architecture, thus as addition. No? The third example can be useful in terms of design process if we consider Michelangelo's sculpture as an abstract object, mostly and more close to the definition of Vasari in the opera of Michelangelo, in the sculpture of Michelangelo. The gap between the precise definition of the knee and the imprecise background of massive rock is describable by a logic of variation. Michelangelo used to adapt different working tools depending on the level of the precision of the portrait figure, going from the roughly outlined shape to the detailed representation of skilled wrinkles. In only scientific topographic map, the power of imprecision acts like an hidden frame. The representation of scientific logic is interrupted by an absence of information. The architectural plans of the main buildings in the center of Rome appears to be a symbiotic relationship with the urban scale. In this case, the symbiotic relationship is definable as an element, an architectural element, that can compromise as a network the entire urban space, working as a network, working as a almost, I would say, an archipelago. So let's proceed now, okay, to after this first conclusion. Let's consider first conclusion of this talk. What we have done until now basically is a kind of introduction, of course, my interpretation, my point of view on the idea of working with imprecision or imprecise, not predefined, not pre-cutted method. And now what we are going to do is exactly to classify under four main chapter umbrella definition that for me, of course, as architects, as an academic, they should be useful in order to be active, or to be exactly explainable as a keyword, and to be operative, no? Kind of operative category. Four main for me, and there are four main. Maybe there are other for other person. There are other kind of definition. It doesn't matter. But for me, those points: subtraction, addition, variation, and in the end, symbiotic relationship are the four main categories in which we can operate in defining a certain process working in precise, let's say, category.